Hello, Lucas. Thank you for being here. How are you doing?
Great, great. How about you? Thank you for having me on.
You have been a player in Florida, which everybody pretty much knows because you have like a huge career, pretty much in it, at the top of everything. And right now, we're bringing you in to talk about the origins of the Weston rugby team, which you were involved. But just to start, let us know a little bit about of your rugby history. How did you get into rugby, and what did you do throughout these years? You're not done by any means, but up to now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I was born and raised in Buenos Aires, Argentina. When I was five, my father took me out to the first practice at Manuel Belgrano, which was the club that I was going to school with as well. And the first time I didn't like it. I was like, oh
Really?
no, 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 not for me. It's nothing that I want to do. And so my dad left it alone. He said, oh, maybe he's not. He used to play he was a fullback, and he had to stop playing early because of an issue with his vision. But then a couple of months later, all my classmates started playing, and then it was kind of fear of missing out. So I wanted to go back out. Um, and I think I still remember that first practice. It was muddy, cold, so it was around July
Perfect.
or August, and I started playing hooker. And from there, pun intended, I was hooked because I started playing then, and then I just didn't really stop. Um, and then my father, we moved out of Argentina. He got a job that had us moving around multiple countries. So we went to Panama. In Panama, there was no rugby, so I had to find something to do. So I played a little bit of flag football. But then we moved to Chile, and in Chile, there was obviously a big rugby community. So I played there. And then I moved to Miami in 2000 and mid 2006. And in mid 2006, I was turning, I think it was 15. So I was still considered youth, and I was looking for a club to play, and anything that was relatively close. Like there was nothing really close to Weston for me to actually make it work. So I even tried for Lauderdale men's, and at the time, I can't remember if there was somebody at the club that told me that perhaps I was a little bit too young to play with the men's side. Um, so funny enough, one of the guys that played for Lauderdale, Josh Cross, he was a teacher at Cypress Bay. He was a math teacher, and him alongside with my friend Alejandro Sansegundo, we really wanted to start a club. We wanted to play, so we started the Weston Lancasters.
Lang.
Um,
Okay.
Lancasters, yeah. It was funny. It was named after a World War II plane, and it's typical kid things. And we recruited a lot of people, and we had some fun during those years, which I can get to in a little bit. But after that, I knew I wanted to keep playing rugby at a good level, so I attended an All Florida Day in Claremont, I think it was, outside of Orlando, and I met Ken Simmons and Gary Barn, who were the coaches at UF. And at the time, UF had a really solid program. They had an A, a B, and a C side. And I was there and I was watching them play, and I said, given that I want to go to a good school, I want to go to a good rugby program, it kind of seemed like a really good fit. So I ended up attending the University of Florida for 4 years. And during that time, I continued to try and get better as a player. So I would, in the summers, take advantage of the time off and go places. I went to Australia during one summer, Japan during another summer. And I ended up finishing my senior year doing an internship with USA Rugby in Boulder, Colorado. So I got to travel a little bit. And after I finished college, I played with the All-Americans my last year. And I started talking to the Boston Rugby Club, who was playing in the ARP at the time. Not the Boston Irish Wolfhounds, but the Boston Rugby Club.
Okay.
They were a D1 program. So I moved to Boston with nothing, not really a plan as far as what I was going to do for a job, because, even then, I believe it was around the time where pro rugby was coming around. But that was also very vague. There wasn't a whole lot of opportunities there, and there was definitely no program in New England. So I played ARP there. enjoyed my time in Boston. Really liked the atmosphere. Played with the ARP All Stars against the Ontario Blues. That first year the ARP was formed, and then I decided to leave Boston and move to New Zealand to play for a year because I wanted to continue developing. And I went to Hawke's Bay, and in Hawke's
How
Bay I did the
how old
academy.
were you? How old were you at this time when you went to New
When I
Zealand?
moved to New Zealand, I was 24.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 24. I moved to New Zealand. Now, it might have been quite late within that development stage, but I felt there was a great opportunity because Kevin Kiddo, who great man, he founded the USA Rugby South, which was a pathway that I played on since 2013. His brother lived in New Zealand, and it was kind of that is the beautiful thing about rugby. They said, "Oh, we'll just give you a place to stay. You can come and play some rugby, and enjoy your time here." So probably one of the best years that I've had playing rugby, just in terms of enjoyment. I lived in Napier, New Zealand. I picked apples during the day as a job, and I played rugby in the evenings, and got to watch some Super Rugby and meet some really good people. But in that moment, I had met the strength and conditioning coach there at the Magpies, and it kind of sparked a bit of an interest into kind of that field. But I continued playing, and I came back to the U.S. and I had to make a decision. I didn't really know if I wanted to go back to Florida because at this point I would have to play men's club rugby, and outside of a few clubs who were pretty consistent like Boca and Naples, there wasn't a whole lot of progression, I guess, there to play at a higher level, except for some of the USA South games that came about once or twice a year. So I reached out to the South community, and Atlanta Old White reached out, and they said, no, we definitely see a place for you here. Francesco Balsas, who's still the head coach there,
Yeah.
good friend of mine, he kind of moved mountains to get me over to Atlanta, and and then now Old White is what it is. But I played with them for several years, and then when COVID hit, I was kind of one of those casualties with COVID. I had an injury on my foot that kind of set me back quite a bit and made me reevaluate if I wanted to continue playing. I did the 404. I tried to make the rugby ATL side as a player, but the more I got into it, the more I really realized that I wanted to continue to stay involved in the game, but I really had a passion for the performance side of things, the strength and conditioning, the coaching, the way that the coaches make the plan and put it into action, and then obviously gives the results on the field. So after that injury, my first son was born. I kind of transitioned to coaching full time, and I kind of made one last hurrah, and I traveled with USA South to Colombia to play my last game of rugby there, and
That was
it's
like two years ago, right?
yeah, it was 2 years ago. Yeah, it might have been
Barra-
yeah,
Was that
2 years ago.
Barranquilla?
Barranquilla, yeah. It was great. It was great fun, but so I ended up being able to finish it on my terms because I hadn't really played rugby for a whole year before that, because I had stopped playing, and so being able to come back and then play 2 games against the national team, and then enjoy it with some of the people that I've known for a long time. It was a great way to cap it as a player. And then after that came about, I got really into the coaching side of things. I was involved with Rugby ATL at the time. I was working with Rodolfo Brogi and obviously Scott Lawrence and a lot of the guys that are now working with the USA team. So I got to learn a lot from them. And then when Rodo took off, I kind of took over Rugby ATL as the head S&C. And after that, the MLR happened and they got bought out, transitioned to LA. I made the move with the team to LA. I was director of performance there for the last 2 seasons, and now going into what would be the 3rd season, and now a new entity, California Legion. So still as director of performance, but kind of, waiting to see what the future brings.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's actually go way back when you were playing with the Lancasters at the time. Also, Ernie was one of the coaches, right?
Yeah, Ernie was also the coach. Yeah, but Ernie came about maybe a little bit after, but Josh was the one that helped us get it off the ground.
Okay. So my understanding is that you were very pivotal in getting Weston Youth going. So how did that happen?
So we had played, I believe it was 2 seasons already with the Weston Lancasters, and my brother at the time was 13, 12 or 13, and he was the same age as Alejandro's brother, Arturo. And they had a couple of friends, and they came to watch the practices, and there was no youth rugby, and they really wanted to play. They kind of they looked up to us. So we got talking, and they really want to get something off the ground. So it was very informal at the beginning. We kind of, Alejandro and I just decided to coach a couple of our brothers and their friends, and kind of give them a little bit of a structure and find them some game time. And with the help of the parents, the parents were very, very important. Lorena Levy, and a couple of the other parents were super important for us to be able to logistically make it work, because we were high school students. So a lot of the stuff that we did, it was more so giving back to what we had learned from our high school coaches or our parents, and kind of put it into action with the youth. And then, because the parents got involved, we were able to do things with Key Biscayne, which Key Biscayne has had a youth program for a very long time. So we were trying to find game time, and we ended up doing these kind of triple header days where the youth teams from the Miami Rugby Club and Key Biscayne used to play the Weston. And we kind of took turns, played in Weston, played in Key Biscayne, played at the Miami grounds. And that's how it started. And then it continued building from there.
Do you remember like the first practices? You had a few kids, like you had a lot of kids or just a few? Nobody knew anything. It
Yeah,
was
we actually had. It's funny because I told my brother, or we told our brothers that if they really wanted us to spend the time and help them, they needed to have enough people to make it worthwhile. So even in the first and second, practices, we still had 12 to 15 kids coming out. And the reality was that maybe there was only 2 or 3 that kind of knew something about it. But it became a really solid group pretty early on. So I'd say we started with around 12, and then we probably built to 25, 30 at times. So it
was
wasn't
this
huge, but yeah, it was
was this
consistent.
2009, 10 around that time, right?
2009, yeah.
Okay. And where would you practice? At
At
Tequesta
regional park in Weston.
Regional Park. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we were we were a little group. We didn't really go through the city and rent the fields. We didn't go through the organized part of things. We just kind of showed up. It was an open field. We would train, and if they were all taken up by soccer, which is almost 99% the case, we would just train on the sidelines, and we made it work. So we found a way.
I do remember because I was involved when the youth started, which was basically Key Biscayne in Miami, like at the earliest. In 2010, we did the first festival, but I'm not sure if you were involved by then. And this was, I don't know if you remember, in Doral, the first ever gathering of actually 4 teams. There was Miami, Key Biscayne, Weston, and Doral with Alejandro Turguman. Were you there? I don't. I just don't.
I No, I had gone off to UF by then, but I do remember. I remember hearing about it. So 2010 was when I graduated high school, and I
Okay.
moved on to UF. So we had 2009, 2008 to 2009 was when we had started the U14 team, and that group kind of stayed together all the way till we left the college in what was it, late August of 2010.
Okay, so it's earlier than I thought. You think you started in 2008 then?
Yeah, towards the end of 2008.
And when you started, did you have any knowledge that there was something going on in Key Biscayne in Miami, or at the beginning you just were like in the void?
No, the only time, well, the time that I actually found out there was some kind of youth rugby was at Ruggerfest. It was at Fort Lauderdale Ruggerfest, because I
Okay.
do remember kids being there and playing touch and whatnot. And I remember taking our group. Eventually, we ended up competing in Ruggerfest with those U14 kids. And yeah, so that I guess that was my first exposure to them, because before that I didn't realize there was kids playing, at the youth level. I thought it was all either high school or college or men's.
And as far as a coach, how did when you guys started playing? What was it like when you just started? Like, was everybody doing everything wrong, or you sort of got them prepared for the games? Because it's so
No,
different, that
yeah,
when you just start, like the first time, and most of them have never played. How
yeah.
different?
Well, it actually was handy that in 2007, really, when we started that the Lancasters, that it kind of became the same thing. We had a lot of kids from high school who started playing. We got we recruited. That's when Alex Tucci came around, and he brought a lot of people too. But a lot of them were either football players or wrestlers that hadn't really played rugby. So we were kind of using the same, I guess, technique or strategy that we did with those high school kids with the U14s. That's okay if you didn't play rugby, so we'll start with the basics. We'll teach you how to pass the ball, and we started we didn't expect them to play games, in any particular time frame. So we spent a lot of the beginning at and a lot of the core skills. So the catch and pass, how to tackle properly, and then even a lot of touch games, and that's how they started to learn how the game worked. Uh, but the nice thing is, just thinking back on it, I don't think there was a moment where I felt like there was chickens without heads just running around chasing after the ball. It seemed like, the kids picked it up. Middle school kids pick up things pretty fast. So it was actually quite organized from the very beginning.
You are known to be outstanding kicker in all areas of the game. Is that something you would work on with the kids to some extent?
Uh, to an extent, yeah. I wouldn't. It was more so the kids that really wanted to kick, that I would spend some extra time with, to teaching them how to drop the ball and, what to aim for, and it was really just referencing a lot of the things that my dad told me, because he was such a big influence. My dad. I always say that my dad lived vicariously through me, because he had to stop playing not in his terms, so he was very, I guess, on top of me to make sure that, I got as much out of the experience as possible. So a lot of the things that he would tell me, he would do research and look at Dan Carter kicking and Wilkinson and all that, and Hugo Porta from back in the day. So he actually spent the time learning how to coach those things to pass on to me, and I would just essentially pass it on to the next person. So it kind of became a waterfall, um, you know, I guess, of knowledge.
As we're on the topic, because I'm like a huge fan of the kicking game in rugby and how important it is. And for the most part, I think it's, in our youth and high school teams, it's really not used as much as it should. So tell me about the kicking game, how important it is, and how it affects a game. Because I've seen you play. I remember vividly a game you played with UF against FIU. You guys were down at the halftime, I think by 3 or 4 tries, and then the second half you actually beat FIU. And I think one of the things is being able to use the kick as a tool, a strategy to win the game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, the rules now and the introduction of the 50-22, and put more emphasis on the kicking game being an offensive strategy as opposed to a way to relieve pressure. Because for the longest time, you either were kicking to get yourself down the field or out of your own 22, or you were kicking because you had nowhere else to go, so you were just kicking the ball downfield and hoping that the team will make a mistake. But I just think that now it's transitioned on to a more of an attacking mindset, where the kicking game, the 50-22, the contestables, is becomes so important. And we look at statistics, and from an MLR perspective, from a collegiate perspective, chances are the higher kicking teams, there's no specific correlation, but it is likely that you'll be successful because they're actually pre-planned or purposeful kicks as opposed to just kicking for the sake of it. So the way we approach it from a coaching perspective is we take it as another part of our game. So we have an attack plan, a defense plan, and our kicking plan, and it's massive. And I always relied on that as a player, but it's now becoming more and more evident than with the world game, and that's the way that the sport transitioned to.
Speaking of kicking for points, which is specifically one type of kicks, tell me about one kick you remember for missing and one for making it, because you've kicked a lot for goal in your career.
Absolutely. Well,
And
I
I
remember
guess
two.
you do have
No,
one
I
of those.
remember two very vividly because they're quite important. So I remember one from collegiate days that I missed. Club days that I missed, and that was we played the D2 National Championship with Old White in 2019.
With who, sorry?
The D2 National Championship with Old White.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so this was later on, and that game we played against Olympic Club from California. So it was a tough game. There's a lot of things that went wrong in the game, but as a kicker, you always think back and you think, oh, if I wouldn't have made that kick, we would have won the game. I had a penalty. It was probably around 35 meters out on the right side, so it was good for a left-handed kicker, left-footed kicker, but it just veered off to the left. I kind of misjudged the wind, and I still beat myself up for it because now Old White won a D2 National Championship, but I'm like, man, if in 2019 we would have made that kick, we probably would have won. And so it's the what ifs, but I don't lose sleep over it, but I remember it vividly. And from a successful part of things, I think one of the best games or one of the most fun games that I've ever had was we played with UF in the inaugural SCRC Championship, which was essentially the SEC. And we played in Mobile, Alabama. And we had to play LSU on a Saturday for the semifinal and Tennessee on the Sunday for the final. Both the best teams in the SEC at the time. And that LSU semifinal was probably, in my opinion, my best collegiate game. I think it was all the kicks. I even kicked a drop goal in that game as well, which you don't really see people doing that anymore.
That's the best, huh? Those are
I
the
know.
best. Really?
I know. So I remember that game specifically. It just the drop kick. I've also shanked a drop kick. On NBC Live at the CRCs with UF. I tried to kick something from 50 meters out of nothing, but I do remember that LSU semifinal. That was one of the best weekends that we had as UF Rugby in the 4 years I was there.
So just tell me a little bit more about of the Lancasters. Did that start in 2007?
Yeah, so 2006. Yeah, because 2006, I was a freshman in Cypress Bay, and we were at the Annex, which is a little bit closer to Davie and Bonaventure. So we weren't really in the main campus. It wasn't until we got to the main campus in Weston in my sophomore year, 2007, where we really started to kick things off, because that's when I started taking class with Josh Cross. And he had said that he played for Fort Lauderdale. So Alejandro and I think we were in the same class. And, we said, we should really talk to him because, we want to play. Alejandro wanted to play. And we started talking, and, Josh said, well, if you guys get it off the ground and, you recruit people, I'm more than happy to help coach and kind of sponsor it, because we needed an adult to have control over it. And I think the first group of people that we started with, it was actually quite a big group, because we recruited by the numbers, and we said just come out, have fun. It was more of the the old cliche about no pads, no pads, all glory, kind of like come here
which is
without
not a,
pads.
which is not a good one in my opinion. It's a
No,
terrible.
but it was all the stuff, all on the shirts that they sold at Ruggerfest, and all the bumper stickers that people used to
I
used to
know.
have. So we kind of use that as leverage to recruit football players, and we had 1,000. It was 1,600 students in our class in Cypress Bay. So we definitely were able to recruit, and we recruited some people that went to Western as well. So it wasn't just Cypress Bay.
This was a club
Yeah,
team in
yeah,
Cypress Bay, and these teams allow for kids from other schools to join. Correct.
yeah, correct.
Where did Tucci come from? Did he was he going to
Tucci
Cyprus?
was Tucci was actually, yeah, he was a football player at Cypress Bay. Um, he he obviously, I'll let him tell his story, but he was massive. I mean, I don't think any other team in Florida at the time had anybody as big as Tucci was when he was in high school.
Was he playing prop or was he playing third row?
No, we played him at eight.
Eight. Of course.
We played him
Given
at eight, and then
given
his
the
senior
ball.
year, I remember his senior year we played against Northeast, which that was also a powerhouse, a high school.
Yeah.
Both Northeast and Taravella were really good, and at one point he played in the centers, and he was playing at 12, and it was kind of his senior year. We were just having fun, and he was just kind of running through the back line. So I'm sure he probably still talks about his ability as a center.
Uh, I don't know if he's that brave enough, but we'll ask him for sure. So, and this team, once you guys went out to college, it sort of disappeared. The Lancasters, it didn't. It was just 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah, yeah. Once we went off to college, there was nobody really to carry it through.
Yeah, of
Even
course.
when we made that transition in Weston, that Weston youth team kind of still stuck together. I was able to get some parents to help the coach, so they still kept that going. But from the high school perspective, yeah, it kind of started merging into that youth one, because I remember at one point Matthew Merowitz, who's playing now for the Tridents and played at Life, and John Powers, who played at Bonaventure and played in the MLR, like they all played for that Weston Rugby Club, but they were in high school. So I guess it kind of faded, and then it just became just Western Rugby, and then it
Yeah,
included the youth and the high school.
yeah, that's what happened. Lucas, what do you when you look back? A couple of questions. It seems like we're having a hard time nowadays to get recruiting recruiting players to rugby. You're I don't know if you're when you're in California, are you a little bit involved with what's going on over there with the youth and high school?
Yeah, I helped out a little bit last off season around some of the academy work, but yeah, obviously Southern and Northern California have some of the biggest youth
Yeah.
programs in the country.
Now here we're having a real tough time getting kids to play at the high school levels, m- more than the younger ones. What what do you think is or not you know what do you think is the cause of that, and do you have any thoughts on how to present the sport, because it does seem like we should have a lot more kids playing because it's the best sport in the world, right? We know that.
Yeah.
But for some reason it's really hard to get high school kids playing.
Yeah, and it's interesting to look at the SoCal model, because they have a big push to make it part of the school curriculum. So a lot of these kids are playing rugby within their schools, or on the other side, they also have a long lineage and heritage of people that have played rugby. There's a big international and Polynesian culture in California, and they're very family oriented. So if one plays, all his brothers and sisters and cousins are playing. So they have a really good in terms of just retention, because it's all a giant family. I think the way that it's transitioned now in other areas of the country is, we haven't really leveraged what's going on in the collegiate and the professional scene. And, to be real, this is not a topic of conversation here, but, professional rugby, whether it's MLR or whatever it is not going to go away, especially if the World Cup is coming here. And there are opportunities for kids to play collegiate rugby and play professionally, whether that's here or abroad. So, where we lose the battle with high school kids is, they specialize early because they want to go to college. College is very expensive. They want to pay for college. And now more than ever, there's so many schools that offer scholarships that are able to get kids through 4 years of collegiate programs, at a much lower cost than they would if they weren't on, on any kind of scholarship. When I was going to UF in 2010, like Life was starting their undergraduate program in 2010. So, and that was the very first program aside from, Cal Berkeley and maybe Kutztown that really offered scholarships for rugby. And now you have everybody. There's what, two now already in Florida that offer scholarships. I think it might have been St. Thomas and MAU potentially.
I guess Ave Maria also, but
and Ave Maria, yeah. So there are opportunities in state, but out of state, there's so many other colleges that are using rugby as a recruiting tool because it helps the university as well, right? They get international students to come to their school, they drive enrollment, so it benefits them. So I think first is kind of educating the kids that there are opportunities for them to go to college through rugby that significantly offset costs for their parents and for them in education. But the other side of that is having some kind of unified vision. And that's what Southern California has as an institution, as an organization. They have a unified vision and they have a pathway that they follow. And it has nothing to do with California as a whole or USA Rugby. They do their own thing, but it works. They have really, really invested parents that go above and beyond and make things happen, which I know in Florida Rugby, there are those kind of parents. And then they have, a pathway in a way that you have, yes, you're trying to develop the rugby in the youth and the high school, but then you also have teams that play representative rugby. Like Southern California Griffins play the NorCal Bears quite regularly at the U18 level, and those kids look forward to that. So I think just Florida has had a lot of, back and forth between all-star teams. They had the Jews, we had the Thunder, the Jaguares. So I think just finding a bit of uniformity and I feel for the union because they're constantly fighting an uphill battle. But a lot of that doesn't really fall on them, and it falls on the people at the actual clubs to be a little bit more collaborative and not feel like they just need to look at it after their own interests. And I'm not trying to shoot any shots at any other people involved in Florida because anybody that's involved is helping the sport. But I think to continue to grow and to make it more enticing for kids to play, you have to have a unified vision and places where they can go and be able to communicate that with them.
Yeah, that thing you mentioned about having the culture of rugby from the top down is something that I did not really think about, but it obviously does make a difference because when you see the strongest clubs here, you do find that at the top it's everybody's coming from rugby, and so that
Yeah.
so last question.
And there is an exception, right? So because when I was in high school and I looked at the other teams because there was a strong competition. I mean, at the time, you had Jupiter, you had Northeast, Taravella, you had Naples. And those were but the people that were in charge of those teams really went above and beyond. The people in charge of Naples were really on top of the things, and they were looking after their kids, and those kids ended up playing in college. I played with and against a lot of those kids in college. Even in Jupiter, we had a bunch of kids that went on to play higher level. Northeast had a couple of Eagles, kids that came on to play, at Life, or that went on to play at UCF together and won a national championship together. So I just think we have to squeeze as much juice out of those special groups as we can.
Cam Dolan from Naples.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Lucas, when you look back, so how old are you now?
33.
So you've had like a 20, no, like 30, 25-year career in rugby by now, more or less. When you look back, what is that you have gotten from rugby that has made a big difference in your life?
I mean, you can talk about the typical rugby values, the camaraderie and the hard work, but for me, it was really that there was always something to work towards. It never kind of settled. Whether we were in high school or in college, you always look for just to become better and be a better player. And then eventually, it kind of faded into me as we all want the best for each other, and there's for for as much as we like to think that there's a bunch of bad people in every sport is I, the more people I met, then the more relationships we formed, then the better we were off because we were all helping each other out. So for me, it's just that collaboration and being able to count on people to achieve something. Like I remember, so our coaches at Rugby ATL. So now I'm in the professional scene, and in 2023 they gave me the opportunity to go to the World Cup and learn from top 14 clubs and from the international side. So I was just coming up and meeting All Blacks and Springbok players and world renowned coaches and super down to earth and they're so open to kind of help because they really love the sport. And I feel like that selflessness that comes from just the wanting to play a sport and love the sport for what it is and not really wanting any kind of accolades, just directly shifted my perspective. It's like I just want the best for the players that I coach now. I saw the way that my coaches, as I was brought up, cared about me, caring about us, my development. So it's just a matter of giving back. So yeah, working hard and resilience in the face of adversity and all of that stuff that typically comes around with any kind of team sports. But for me, the selflessness that comes around with coaches that really want the best for you and want to develop you is what really drove me into continuing to stay involved. Now as a coach, and hopefully my kids want to play rugby too, and I hope that they see the same thing, that they see that people care for them for the development as humans, and not just as rugby players, because that's one thing that rugby has is this sense of like family, and to me that's everything.
What would you say to parents on why it would be a great thing for their kids to play rugby?
So
Because you may agree that if you have kids, this is my personal case. I have been very lucky to have two kids playing rugby, and they played against you at some point. That it has been such a huge difference in their lives. For the fact that they played rugby and not. So, what would you tell parents? Why is rugby such a good fit for kids?
yeah, I mean, I look at rugby the same way that I look at just going to college. It's a life lesson that no matter what you do to try to teach your kids to be better humans and be better people in the world, you're not going to be able to achieve it. It doesn't really sink into them for as much as you feel like you have a good way with words and be able to teach them life lessons. The sport itself teaches you life lessons. It teaches you to work hard. It teaches you to be able to communicate with other people, to resolve conflicts without resorting to uncontrolled aggression. Be able to let out your aggression too. Be able to get physical, because from a physical perspective, you get in the benefit of exercise. You get in the benefit of just the endorphins and just being able to be physically ready to do anything. But from a life lesson perspective, I think that's what rugby really has to offer is, you have to plan, you have to, at one point be organized, you have to be able to learn. You play youth rugby, you're learning how to do a skill. When you go into college, you're learning how to run a system. When you go on to play professional, you're learning how to pick apart an opposition and analyze the game. So you're always learning skills that directly transfer to business, to life. You know, how many international players I have now retired are successful businessmen? I could probably tell you like there's above 90% of them because they have the resilience that they get through the sport. They have the work ethic, and they have gotten all these experiences, whether that's in game or in practice or dealing with their teammates, that have just prepared them to take on life. And you just feel a sense of self confidence going about your life that I don't think any other sport could probably give you.
Yeah, I agree. So finally, I don't know if you want to mention any people for who you are grateful of helping you in your rugby life throughout the years.
Oh man, I
I know
there's
stuff.
so
I know stuff.
there's so many, like I think, obviously Josh and Ernie initially when we first started, my dad out of everybody else, my dad for sure, but every single person that I've met through rugby in Florida and outside of Florida, it's just been, in one way or another an influence. Our coaches at the Lancasters, the coaches at the Florida Juice. I feel like I took a step forward in the right direction as a player when I played with the Juice and with the Florida Thunder. Di Morgan was also very influential. And continues to stay involved in the youth development side of things, and he just never gives up. Then when I went to college, Ken and Gary, from after college, I think coming to Atlanta, it kind of allowed me to come and get another level. And Colton Carriaga, Blake Bradford, Scott Lawrence, Steve Brett, all those guys that were the life and blood of rugby ATL and rugby here in Atlanta have just been such big influence and continue to be. I continue to learn from them, and now here in this off season that I've been spending at Life, using Blake as a mentor, as a somebody who's been in a head coach position for a long time, and still continue to learn every day. So I think there's a long list, and I'm sorry if I'm leaving anybody out, but so many people that really were pivotal, and not just myself, but the people that just came out of Florida, Pete Malcolm, Cam Dolan, Perry Baker, all these people that really they kind of, people turn a blind eye to Florida, but there's so many people that are now, whether players, ex-players, or coaches that came out of Florida that are doing great things, and it's all because of those people that really cared. Kevin Kiddo, man, I couldn't even remember every single name. Like Evan Hay, when he's now in Orlando helping out with the women's, but when he came in and took over that youth side of the FRU, like that was also a huge moment. I did a little bit of an internship with him when I was still in college, trying to kind of get the ins and outs. So it's all been the coaches and the volunteers that have really helped us get to where we are.
Okay. Well, Lucas, thank you very much for your
No
time,
problem. Thank you for having me.
for your stories, and I guess we're gonna see a lot more of you still.
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay. Say hi to your dad.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye.